Watch that mute button. It's a devil. Welcome, everybody. I'm not sure if any of my comments were heard, so I'll just do them quickly. My name is Stephen Applebaum. I'm the managing partner of Insurance Solutions Group and your moderator for today's webinar, as well as your moderator for the upcoming conference that this webinar is reference to, which is the Connected Insurance Canada Conference. It's actually formerly the Insurance Analytics Canada Conference, and it's the 5th annual version of that conference, now expanded to include more topics. It's taking place in Toronto on September 10th and 11th in Toronto at the Marriott Eaton Centre Hotel. I will introduce briefly the backgrounds of each of our speakers in advance, and then ask each of them in order from left to right on your screen to present their prepared comments, following which we'll do a Q&A and invite all of you to ask your questions. This is always a very popular segment of our webinars. Let me, first of all, if I may, before you put that screen up, introduce Catherine Bishop and just give you a few words about Catherine. Catherine is the VP of Sales Optimization for RBC Insurance, leading a team of professionals who support RBC's various sales and distribution channels. They deliver expert-level second-tier support to sales agents as well as clients. Catherine has been with RBC for over 18 years and joined RBC Insurance in March 2010. She was a senior consultant with RBC's Global Consulting Services team in Toronto, specializing in operations and in international mergers and acquisitions, and was a retail banking branch manager. Catherine is a graduate of McMaster with a BA in political science and an MBA from Dalhousie. She's known for her change leadership abilities, and Catherine has her change management certification from ProSci and her professional coaches certification with CTI. She's fluent in both written and spoken French. And with that, let me just address, before I ask Catherine for her comments, address the slide on the screen. This is from our friends at Capgemini and EFMA, and it represents the stages of automation by sector, the stages of the adoption of automation by sector. And I found it particularly useful as a reference for today's comments and for the conference itself. You can all take a longer and closer look at this slide when you get a copy of today's webinar. But I just wanted to point out where P&C ranks versus life and health in each of the 4 stages. And as you can see, on stage 1, where automation is supporting processes, is still the smallest of the bands, but growing. And it's relatively equal adoption, but not completely equal amongst all the lines of business. So I wanted to share that slide with everybody. And now back to Catherine Bishop, Vice President of Sales Optimization at RBC Insurance, and ask for her prepared comments. Catherine?
All right, thanks, Stephen, and welcome and good morning to everyone. And I appreciate the slide and the adoption, Stephen, because I think by the end of this presentation, it's really going to hit on digitization and transforming our services and experience, just given my role in distribution. So let's get to the second slide. I have a few slides, but I'm going to try to get through them fairly quickly. Let's move. Yeah. So a little bit about RBC Insurance Distribution for those of you out there who aren't familiar with us. We're a full-service solution provider. We're multi-line and multi-channel. What that means is we offer solutions across all the products in Canada: home, auto, travel, wealth, annuities, reinsurance, as well as creditor. And we offer that throughout multiple channels. So we have large advice centers, 3 of them across Canada, over 52 storefronts, mobile advisors attached to those storefronts. We have digital advisors and social platforms, and that's where we're going to talk a little bit about today, independent brokers and travel partners. So my role is to support a team of about 2,000 agents, licensed agents across Canada. And you'll see the bulk of what my team supports. Today we're kind of going to hit on two areas, or two stacks in my team. One is the sales technology stack. So we provide CRM solutions to all of our channels, and our platform of choice is at salesforce.com. We also provide contact center technology, and our platform of choice in there is Genesis, with a few other really cool tools that we'll talk about today. So when the Nexus team came to me and said, Catherine, what is the big problem that you're dealing with? What keeps you up at night in terms of business problems? What I said was, nobody answers the phone. And they kind of said, well, how's that a business problem? So if you think about, and I'm going to go to traditional life and health insurance, if you think about the way that we traditionally interact with consumers in life and health insurance, we do a lot of that by phone. We do a lot of that at the kitchen table. And client preferences on how to engage with people have changed very obviously. And we all experience that in our lives today. So I pulled out a few stats to just exemplify the problem that we're dealing with as an industry. If you want to bring in new business as a life and health industry, whereby yesterday you would have called people, made proactive and outbound calls, or gone and as a result of that call, perhaps sat at a table or transacted through the phone. Our problem today is that people actually aren't answering the phone anymore. And I'm using that as an extreme. Some people answer their phone, but they're very selective about them having the balance of control over when they answer the phone and for who. So just to give you a few stats that'll get into my so what and exemplify the problem. 67% of households don't have a landline anymore. Landlines used to be the center of the household, the anchor of the household. If you wanted to reach a client or a consumer, you would call their landline. So more and more you can see that Canadians don't have that anymore, and we don't have that as a solution anymore. People don't like to actually talk on the phone. So people, if they're engaging in their networks, they actually prefer and use more email, text, and social platforms to actually have valuable conversations and exchange of information. More and more, they don't actually pick up the phone to call their friends or to call even service providers. And then something really interesting is the fact that, but people spend more time on their digital platforms and their social platforms than they do drinking, socializing, and grooming all together. So, and there's another stat that's not up here, which is, and people, 90% of the time, people have their mobile devices at arm's length of them. So they're always near their phone. They don't want to talk on their phone. They may not answer and tend not to answer the phone when someone is calling that is not in their contact list or unidentified. And the anchor of the household is gone. So the question and the business problem that keeps us up at night is, so how do we reach consumers? Let's move on. So I to exemplify how it's getting more and more difficult to reach consumers through traditional means, I pulled out a month's worth of our recent Life and Health Dialer campaign. So this just kind of shows you how much effort and what the cost of acquisition looks like for us when we're trying to reach consumers. So basically, if you read the chart, you'll see that we had 30,000 leads. We attempted to dial those 30,000 leads. So the dialer dialed 90,000 times. We actually reached 10,000 people. So 10,000 people picked up the phone. And out of that 10,000 group of people that picked up the phone, 131 sales were made, or we were able to help 131 Canadians. So if you were to look at a trend line over time, which I didn't have a lot of time to put together, but you would see that the attempts to dial have increased at least threefold over the last year, if not 2 years. And the success in actually reaching a client has decreased at least fivefold over the last 2 to 5 years. So what does that mean? It means dialer effectiveness is decreasing. People aren't actually picking up the phone as much as they used to, which means to us that the cost of acquisition is increasing because you're spending more effort to reach a client. And client sentiment is decreasing because clients don't actually want to engage through the phone anymore. So let's move ahead. So what do we do? Or what are we doing? So a lot of us online are trying out new technologies, chatbots. Specifically what we're doing is we have a few pilots on the go. So right now we're using Amelia technology for natural language understanding in our contact center technology environment. So what that means is right now, if you call us, you'll actually speak to a bot, and the bot will route you to the right place that you want to do business to. But this is inbound calling. But the next capability of that bot is to actually be smart about giving you a next best offer. And when that happens and when it learns about that, then we can flip that out into a chat bot. So we're on our way to build chatbots. So what that means is when people come to your site, they're already looking to do business with you, and you intersect their journey and try to help them and help them navigate to the right product. The other thing that we've done and that we're doing is reaching out into social platforms. So a couple years ago, we did a pilot whereby we scrubbed the Twitter universe and found people who were talking about insurance and jumped into the conversation to offer some value. We found that worked best with travel insurance at the time. And today we have a team in our advice center who are reaching out through Facebook. So when clients are having discussions in Facebook and or orient themselves towards our Facebook properties, we're there to catch them and give them advice. So moving our leads and our activities around client engagement from the phones to things that are completely automated, like chatbots. We're in our journey, we're in the process of training our bots so that they are able to go out into the digital universe and add value on their own. But in the meantime, we've got our advice centers working on intercepting questions and conversations in the social universe to add some value there. So I'm going to conclude with that. People aren't answering the phone, and we're looking towards digital tools and more often bots and social platforms to engage with clients. Back to you, Stephen.
Thanks very much, Catherine. Very enlightening. People may not be using the phone, but they're sure texting questions in here. So we'll follow up during Q&A with you. Be prepared. Thank you for that. Our next presenter is Scott Marnik, who's the AVP of Innovation and Insurance Solutions and Individual Customer at Great West Life. Scott's personal mantra, which I found interesting and like to share with you, is disruptive by design, challenging the status quo for a reimagined customer experience. A little background. Scott has over 20 years of practical leadership experience in customer-facing and early-stage organizations within healthcare, insurance, and research technology companies. He has extensive practical achievements in agile product development, transformational change, and strategic digital marketing on a global level. Scott is completing his master's degree in innovative ecosystems from MIT Sloan University and holds graduate degrees from the University of Toronto Rotman School of Management, Western University, and an executive MBA from the University of Athabasca. Please welcome Scott Marnik. Go ahead, Scott.
Thanks, Stephen, and good morning, everybody. Pleasure to be on the call here, and thanks for that introduction. I'm going to start by sort of picking up on some of the themes from Catherine. I think that one thing that I think beyond, looking at how we communicate, whether it's through telephone or through other means, I think that we need to make our entire delivery of customer experience a heck of a lot more simpler. And so, we can all agree that insurance might not be sexy, but I think we can also agree it should be a whole lot easier. And day to day, I am very fortunate to be able to be leading change, innovation, some of the digital transformation activities that we're working on here. And they are all focused on improving the customer experience, but it's also not forgetting about the advisor experience. I think that we, on the road to innovation within insurance, we really need to keep a careful balance and consideration around what we're leveraging to improve our experiences with customers, and never forget that we are in the business of providing exceptional advice. And I think that's really at the core of what we're trying to do when we prioritize the areas that we're going to be focused on. And I want to pick up on this simplification piece. So just a couple hours ago, Great-West Life just announced a rebranding and a major relaunch. We are no longer in the market going to be known as we transition as Great-West Life, London Life, or Canada Life standalone. So the relaunch brand, Canada Life, is actually an attempt to be simpler for the customer. So we're not looking to communicate through 3 different brands. We're trying to unify that into one consolidated, easy channel. And Catherine's right. Customers these days are looking to access, our services, our advice, and really receive communication from us in a variety of different methods. And we need to be open to that sort of omni-channel opportunity. Some of the things that we're looking at here, I think, as I look at leveraging things, certainly one of the things as we relook and rebrand Canada Life, we like to say that we're here to help the financial, physical, and mental health of all Canadians. And that's a great lofty statement, which, I think inspires a lot of us within the organization here. One of the biggest challenges, though, that we face through customer experience, or to try to get at exceptional customer experience, is really creating that lifetime engagement with customers, especially in the life insurance, area. A little bit different on a group basis, but at the end of the day, I think in order to do that, we've got to become more relevant in the day-to-day, lives of Canadians. We need to be attuned to these new channels through social media, through digital means. We need to be easier to understand, offer up our information, and provide, our advisors, and provide at some level consumers to be able to actually strengthen their knowledge and financial literacy through advice that they can receive, directly, but also that can, allow them to actually work through tools that we can provide them as well. We've moved to very recently a very, very much a goals-based advice solution offering within our wealth services group. More recently, though, we've been really attacking, and I think this is a big thing for insurance right now, is to really be leveraging the technologies, artificial intelligence, predictive analytics, key facets of behavioral economics. We've done that in a new digital lab investment over the last year, creating Simple Protect, which is really a smart and simplified term application where we actually used data and analytics to dramatically reduce the number of questions we're asking, looking at a much smaller amount of evidence that we're trying to gather, and really taking what in some cases for a simple term sale for an advisor from 35 days, in some cases in about 40% of the time now, to about 20 minutes. And this is a digital application that is advisor-led, but again, it's simplifying the opportunity at certainly at a certain level of our insurance. Not all of our insurance products, though, are can be well attuned to that. So we need to still be making sure that across the board in our offerings, we are focused on providing simplification where it comes to our offering digital contracts in the future that are based on simple language, simple wording that's not confusing, making sure that we are using behavioral approaches to everything that we do, whether it's something we're creating on our websites or something that's inherent in our applications. As we try to become more engaged with Canadians and with the customers, insurance is changing in terms of being able to create actuarial tables and to be able to look at models specifically for pricing. That's changing, and while some of that will not change overnight, we are moving to a more dynamic area of insurance where in the future there may be opportunities to be able to have customers take advantage of maybe a premium or a very healthy lifestyle and be able to receive benefits for that. And again, that is in tune, our focus there is to be in tune with the fact that we are looking after and trying to optimize financial, physical, and mental health and well-being of Canadians. I think as insurers, we have to ask ourselves a couple of, really three questions. Are we using the data that's in front of us, the data-driven approach to really understand customer habits and needs, and are we building to those needs? Second, are we digitally connected? Are we relevant with the trends, opinions, and desires of the customers? Because if we're not, and we're not using a design thinking methodology to create our new solutions, then I think we're really missing the boat. And again, I come back to this, are we easy to do business with? Maybe that is looking at things like Catherine referenced, which is like improving the way that we're communicating. And, at the end of the day, are our operations, are they aligned with these customer strategies? It's great to say, customer is the center of everything, but we have to have the, practices and the day-to-day process in place for us to be able to deliver that next generation customer experience opportunity. So a number of things that we're working on, but I think that we are moving to a new era. The core target markets that we've been looking at, they're getting older. There's a large amount of distribution of wealth that's going to be happening over the next few years to a younger generation. And are we modernized to be able to take advantage so that we have the opportunity to provide advice and to continue offering exceptional services? And I think that will be through, again, using a more digitally transformative approach. It's going to be using smart analytics to be able to simplify the process, but to also help identify who are those customers, what is driving their behavior, what are their goals, how can we assist and help them meet that. And I think by doing that, we get to that sort of lifetime engagement model, which I think this is where insurance is truly headed. We need to embrace the technology, and as a colleague of mine said the other day, it's time to really get on the bus. I think one of the big learnings with a lot of the technical components of insurance in this new age has been, for me, that we need to pilot more, we need to experiment more. As a company, we need to be more agile. As an industry, very agile. But there's nothing to say that we should not get started today. We all have legacy systems that are holding us back, but reality is we need to fix those, move on, but we need to start immediately. If you do not have some of the core goals within the company right now, looking at how to be adapting to this new world, in front of us. Insurance, underwriting, everything in 2030 is going to be a vastly different world than it is today. And let's not lose the opportunity to win the hearts and minds of customers through exceptional experiences if we don't make those investments and the right, really, decisions today. So I'll kind of leave it on that, because I'm sure there'll be some questions.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions. And first of all, congratulations on the new brand, Canada Life. It's ultra simplified. I think you nailed it with that. And your passion for innovation, especially in the life sector, is showing through. So we look forward to asking questions, getting them answered during Q&A. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Stephen.
It's my pleasure now to introduce David Arbuthnot, who is the Director of Innovation of the Innovation Outpost for Wawanesa. A most interesting name. I think we'll learn more about that name and its purpose. The outpost is located at Communitech in the heart of the Innovation District in Kitchener-Waterloo, and serves as Wawanesa's connection to the insurance ecosystem in the Toronto Kitchener-Waterloo Tech Corridor. Prior to Wawanesa, David spent the previous 5 years in product management at a leading telematics provider, working on some of the largest UBI and road usage charging implementations in North America and in Europe. David holds an MBA in strategy and finance from the Schulich School of Business at York University and a Bachelor of Engineering and Management in Computer Engineering from McMaster. We welcome and thank David and look forward to your comments.
Great. Thank you, Stephen. And again, pleasure to be doing the webinar today. I'm part of Wawanesa's larger innovation group. So we have a couple of facilities. We have a large innovation lab out near our head office in Winnipeg, Manitoba. But we also wanted to be in Ontario, kind of in the heart of the tech community. And so we've opened what we call the Innovation Outpost, which is a little bit scaled down, but it gives us access to all the interesting things that are going on in this market as well. So that's why we're called the Outpost, the Innovation Outpost. In terms of my remarks, I'll probably start off by saying I really don't have answers for anyone, but since I'm in innovation, I have lots of questions, and so I thought I'd put some of those out there as a starter for ways to think about this. So in terms of exceed your customers' expectations, it seems like a fairly simple statement and a great goal. But I thought I'd unpack that a little bit because I think it's an interesting framework to think about how do you go about doing this. What pieces do you need to put in place to really create a transformative experience at the end of the day? So I'm going to start where shall we start? With customers. So do you know who they are? So are you thinking about your understanding your customers, and what meaningful insights do you have into them? So how aware are you of who they are? So that we think about that around personality, behavior, and interactions. And so again, what insights can you generate from that? So as Catherine mentioned, the usage of landlines, or how people have their mobile device, how that's changing. Having those insights really starts to inform what you're going to do, and understanding how those customers are changing or evolving over time. You used to be able to make assumptions about certain demographics and their use of technology, but a lot of those assumptions are becoming outdated, right? Do you have a current understanding of those types of things? So lots of questions you need to answer if you want to do a good job. The point of having those questions really is to develop some personas, so you can kind of think about your customers in sort of manageable groups if you're going to take on some of the new design approaches. Scott mentioned design thinking. And so really, when you're getting started in design thinking, right, it's all about being able to empathize with those customers, or really those personas, and defining a point of view for their needs. So that leads to the next piece in terms of once you have a sense of who your customers are, you can now get an understanding of what their expectations are. And to do that, we really need to think deeply kind of about, what is their situation, right? Expectations are situational. I probably have a different expectation of what help looks like if I'm, stranded on the side of the road immediately after a car accident than I would have 2 weeks later when I'm, dealing with that. So understanding the situation and what their needs are, specific to that time even. So once you have those, therefore you can really get an understanding of the expectations. And when you dive into that, then you can start to understand now, based on those expectations, what are some of the pain points? Where are we maybe not living up to those expectations? What are the expressed expectations that the people have? So there's channels to get direct feedback from them, but also what are their unexpressed expectations? So maybe things they aren't saying, but are there ways to use things like sentiment analysis to better understand expectations that are there that aren't necessarily expressed? So once you have customers and their expectations, now we're thinking about, well, how do we exceed them? And one of the key questions there is how are you framing who you're comparing yourself to, right? In terms of exceeding a customer's expectations, are we framing that versus their expectation of other insurers? Are we framing that versus expectation of other financial services transactions, so adjacent type industries, or are we framing that against sort of world-class providers of customer service? So the Amazon or Nordstrom's or other great examples of customer service. And once you're doing that, how do you measure their expectations, right? Do you have the right metrics identified? Do you have the right tools in place to capture it? Do you have the right processes to analyze it? So thinking deeply kind of about all those three things, and then that leads into how do you operationalize that? So do you have the right structures in place to be able to create those transformative experiences? Can you bring together the right group of people? So the domain experts, the customer experience people, the user experience people, innovation experts, operational efficiency experts. Can you bring all the right people and enable them to go down a path to create that transformative experience? Do you have the right methodologies in place? Do you know what methodologies you're going to use? There's different ones out there. There's design thinking, there's lean startup approaches. They all kind of focus on owning the problem, deeply understanding it, and being able to ideate, prototype, and test those solutions. Use data to really measure, are you actually solving the problem? And so do all of your people have the right skills and knowledge and training to actually do those methods? And then finally, are you able to repeat and scale that process once you have it? And that really speaks to is your organization moving towards agility? Is it becoming responsive, and is it putting in place the right things to be resilient? So as the future of work kind of changes for everyone, those are some of the big issues or challenges that we're facing, and looking for ways to get ourselves in a position where we can actually then create the actual transformative experience. So I'll turn it back over to Stephen at that point.
Thank you, David. That's very interesting. It's a great way to use questions to drive answers, and your engineering background definitely showed through in your approach here. We'll be looking forward to asking you some questions during the Q&A session. Thanks again for the presentation. I'm going to move on to our fourth presenter, a return presenter for us, Jonathan. Hello again. Jonathan has spoken at previous Insurance Nexus conferences. Jonathan is the AVP of Claims Transformation and Strategy at Aviva. He's currently responsible for identifying and assessing the potential of advances in technology to improve the Aviva claims customer experience and to make it easier for claims staff to deliver that experience in ways that surprise and delight Aviva's customers. Jonathan is actively engaged in discussion on topics including AI, machine learning, IoT, big data, analytics, digital, and blockchain, particularly with regard to the potential application of these technologies to insurance industry challenges. I just noted in looking at Jonathan's background on LinkedIn, and I wanted to share with everybody, one of the people that he worked with in the past wrote the following brief comment, and I think it's probably a great introduction to Jonathan. He has a passion for technology, blending into the ability to drive business solutions. With that, Jonathan, please share your comments.
Thank you, Stephen, and good research. Hi, everybody. So my colleagues that just spoke provided great insights into some of the things that we're doing to bring things like simplicity, digitization, and omni-channel interaction to insurance. So I don't feel I need to repeat much of what they've covered. I'm going to focus a little bit more on customer experience expectations, and quite aligned actually to one of the questions that David just raised. So customer experience in insurance is actually quite a fascinating topic. I mean, insurance is one of the only things that customers buy with absolutely no intention of ever using. So I mean, I guess you could say the same for the exercise equipment in my basement, but that's a little bit different. But given that insurance is a bit of a grudge purchase, we hear that said a lot. On the policy sales and servicing end of the insurance life cycle, there's a lot of opportunity for competition and differentiation for insurers around modernization of the customer experience. Customers themselves are able to readily compare their policy experiences, whether that's year over year at the same carrier, whether it's carrier to carrier, broker versus agent experience. And in each case, that's mostly an apples to apples comparison. So there is room to fight and win in regard to delivering great customer experiences. And customers can really get a sense for who's providing the better, the easier, the faster service through legitimate sort of bake-off and first-hand experience. I'm going to talk a little bit more from the claims customer experience, which is quite a different animal altogether. That's really what keeps me busy most of the time in my role. So for context, on the P&C side of the world, in insurance, only about 10% of our customers ever make a claim. And for the vast majority of customers that are faced with filing a claim, it's probably their first time ever doing so. So here we are, we're at the moment of truth, right? The dreaded opportunity to use the product that they bought that they hoped they'd never need to use. And as I said a moment ago, statistically speaking, most claimants have no prior claims experience. So it's not like we get a total loss fire customer calling us up at Aviva and complaining that the last time they burned their house to the ground, Wawanesa was much faster at arranging alternative living arrangements. The direct comparison oftentimes just isn't there. So what do customers expect from a claims perspective, and where do those expectations come from? So interestingly, while our claims customers don't necessarily have any insurance claims experience, they do have all kinds of loss experience, experience with bad things happening. It's just a matter of degree. So credit cards get compromised, right? Amazon deliveries arrive damaged. Mobile phones get dropped in toilets. It happens. And when it does, here's what customers experience. So the bank calls them proactively, says their card was compromised, that they've canceled the card and issued a new one, and don't worry about the charges, they're taking care of it. They might ask the customer to verify a couple of last known legitimate transactions. They might even ask the customer to sign something, but even that's becoming quite passé. With Amazon, you go to your order history, you click the return button, you pick a reason from a list, print a label, and stick it back in the mail. You walk into the Apple store with your dead phone and you walk out with a working one. That's actually where customer experience expectations are set. It's about proactive, fast, easy, and convenient service. So if we reflect on that and recognize that that's where customer experience expectations are being set, we can really start to understand the needs of the customer and respond with appropriate innovation. As a community of carriers, of brokers, agents, insurtechs, service providers, we really do have to innovate and take some risk to understand our customers better and respond in new ways. Most importantly, though, from a claims perspective, we have to make sure that innovation and the application of technology don't come at the expense of empathy, of understanding, of patience, and of basic humanity. So whether we're talking about P&C or life and health, the customer on the other end of the line is often in some degree of shock. They may have had the privacy and security of their home compromised. They may have lost their home. They may have hit a pedestrian with their car. They or someone they love might be seriously injured, or someone they love might be critically ill or even gone forever. So it's entirely possible that they're having the absolute worst day of their life. So I wanted to end with that thought to say that, innovation is wonderful. There is ample opportunity for us to improve the customer experience, to differentiate in a great many ways. But in claims, that customer experience needs to remain flexible and adaptable so that we're meeting our customers' needs in ways that are comfortable, approachable, and appropriate for them, for the context of their loss. All of our investment in modernization and digitization will give us tremendous opportunity to meet customers where they are. I'm finding increasingly the application of innovation is actually in empowering and enabling my workforce, my frontline adjusters, to have less work to do, to remove friction from their workflow so that they can be more present, so that they can be more responsive and more nimble in addressing the needs of the customers that they're serving. So that's sort of my perspective, and looking forward to some questions.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks, everybody, for the prepared remarks. We're going to definitely leave some time here now for Q&A. We've got a lot of questions. I just wanted to remind everybody and anybody who may have joined us late that today's webinar is the first of 3 webinars which are being presented in the run-up to the Connected Insurance Canada Conference, which was formerly the Insurance Analytics Canada Conference. It's our 5th year of presenting this conference. It's now expanded, which explains 3 webinars, each with different focus. And the conference is taking place September 10th and 11th in Toronto at the Marriott Eaton Centre Hotel. So thanks again, everybody, for the great prepared remarks, which are generating a lot of questions. I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to get right into them now. The first one, Scott, is for you. How do you see the traditional advisor channel fitting into the future of simplified self-serve experiences being deployed?
Great question. And maybe to sort of leverage too off of Jonathan's comments too, I think that in all of this new talk about innovation, digital transformation, I think Jonathan rightly said, we're in the business of basic humanity, and I think we can't lose sight of the fact that our role is to help our customers, help Canadians, and to provide really professional advice. Where I see the future of how this new technical or digital world can fit in, I think that again, we need to understand how consumers want to learn about things to some extent. Can we provide them with some tools to be able to do that? Can we provide them with the ability for advisors to actually use tools to augment and really help understand and identify where the goals of those Canadians could be looking? And I think as long as we understand that there needs to be, choice and options in everything we do, I think fitting that in, if you've got very complex insurance and portfolio needs, you need strong advice. That does not go away. Can that mean that some of the other areas like a term insurance or again even just customer service in general from an insurer, can we provide things that are easier for people to tap into us, to get service, to get answers? That would be great. I don't think though that it changes again what we're in the business of trying to do.
Thanks for the response. Can I ask a follow-up question, if I may? I'm sure a few other people are thinking about it. In the wealth management sector of financial services, we hear and read about the expression robo-advisors. Scott, is it realistic, and do you see some point in the near future where chatbots or automated technologies will be used to dispense advice and assistance?
So it might be a rarity in sort of the innovation world to say I don't think so. I think that there are some models out there where consumers are using chatbots and companies are using that, but I think that that may be helpful again to be using those tools for people to come up on their own financial literacy needs, but I still do not think that replaces over time the professional advice. I think that we can be using and perhaps trying to identify how do we provide information to clients using these technical means, in a more coherent and a more easy to consume, simplified manner. But I do not think it actually replaces what we're in the business of doing. Can it help? Can it augment? Can we try to identify new ways to use this technology to improve the conversations between an advisor and the client? I think we definitely can.
So maybe to support your internal staff, but not to communicate with customers.
That's potentially it. I mean, again, I think I also indicated that we have to have the right operating model and processes behind the scenes to actually improve turnaround times for customers, I think for our distribution partners. And I think that some of this technology, although people want to run and take a look at how this can be front-facing to a customer, I think we need to look, how could it actually be deployed in the house, within our, offices to streamline processes. I think there's too much emphasis perhaps on the digital piece direct to consumer than there needs to be. Again, I think Catherine started things off by saying people want to consume things and consume information in different ways. And I think we need to be open to that, but I think we can't lose sight of the business that we're in. Despite all of these technical innovations, it's about trying to figure out how to piece them into what we're doing to even deliver a more exceptional customer experience in the future.
Thanks. If any of the other presenters would like to add any comments to that answer to that question, just raise your voice. Otherwise, I'm going to move to the next question.
Hi, Stephen. Yeah, I'd like to jump in if I may. I think in answering the first question about the move to customer self-service and what it means from an advice perspective, I think we have to think about things in terms of what is transactional versus what is relationship oriented. And I think if you look even as simply as over the fence to retail banking, and you ask yourself, where did all the bank tellers go? Customers expressed interest and desire to be freed from having to speak to a human and line up to do simple things like move money from one account to another, to deposit a check, to get cash. And they were happy to take those transactions either to the banking machines or to the online capabilities. So the bank tellers had to reinvent themselves. They created this new job profile called personal financial advisor. I think the same will be true from a transactional perspective in insurance, especially on the P&C side, where the transaction of buying a policy, of servicing that policy, making changes to it over time, will increasingly move into the self-service domain. But what springs up around it is a need for advice and relationship management. And brokers and agents have a duty to those customers to reinvent themselves in much the same way as the bank tellers did, and rebrand themselves as personal risk advisors. Because that's really where customers are going to struggle, is in identifying what's right for them, what's appropriate for them, and ensuring that the true risk in their life is covered, especially as new risks emerge with things like cyber exposure and things like that. We're moving into a different territory, and those providing expert advice need to move with them.
I would add to
Anybody
that.
else?
Yeah, I would add to that two things, one consumer related and one technical related. So I agree. In wealth management is a different level of complexity, and we've got some tools there that will definitely assist the conversation. In the pilot that we're doing, though, what I would say is from a consumer research perspective, we received some really interesting feedback about why consumers prefer talking to a bot versus a person. And it's funny because the prevalent reason is judgment. So people don't want to be judged, and they feel like bots are very if-then coded with no emotion or judgment. So we need to think about that, because consumers are almost more willing to go to bots, I'm calling them bots, AI, whatever you want to call them, than they are to people for certain things, definitely for certain things. Technically, if you go back to the last slide of my presentation, there's a little live chat box there. And just to that point made around supplementing the conversation, as the chat bots start out, the machine part of them will receive a question, and if we have a canned Q&A response, because a lot of people have asked that question, the chat bot will be successful in posting that and putting that up to the client. But as soon as the client, in our POC, as soon as the client asks something outside of the parameters of a frequently asked question, we pop them out, or with some level of complexity or something that requires advice, we pop them out and connect them with a live licensed advisor. So I totally agree with, we're at the stages where we're complementing the experience with the bots, and we're actually using bots to do volume and scale type interactions with clients, and then popping out the pure complex or advice-driven instances. So think about that, really drives scale in your distribution network, and in terms of acquisition, really helps you cover more grounds. But I do agree, we're not there yet, and we're still training both the consumer to use the bots for an increased level of complexity and service, as well as our agents to kind of raise the bar with your level of intellect and advice and capability, because you won't have to give very simple interactions with clients anymore, because our digitization platforms can do that for you. So to me, we're living it, and we're researching already that bots are becoming a prevalent choice for a behavioral reason that perhaps we didn't see coming, or maybe we did. and that they're gonna creep up that scale of complexity, but it'll definitely be driven by consumer adoption and comfort levels.
Thanks, Catherine. You made me think about the day in the future when bots start insulting people. But so far, it's not happening. I've got another question that takes us. I'm sorry. Another question here that takes us in a very different direction. In Canada, there exists the CSIO, much like the Accord in the U.S., overseeing data exchange and standards of P&C insurance products for the broker channel. Will similar standards be set for the group benefits industry in order for the broker channels, MGAs, TPAs, to simplify, and trying to read the rest of the questions, to simplify and automate their process? So that's sort of a long-winded way of asking a question about group benefits. Do we have anybody here who would like to respond to that one? And data standards? Nope. Okay, well, we should move on. I had been collecting some questions. Back to Scott. Thinking about this, Scott, are the life insurance products different in their level of innovation and adoption of automation because of the length of relationship with policyholders and the lack of churn in this product segment? Any comments on that?
I'm sorry, the point was, are our products holding up to sort of the long-term relationship? Is that?
No, the question is innovation and adoption in life lagging other sectors because of the long duration of relationships that policyholders have with the life carrier and the lack of churn that goes on in that segment?
It could well be. I'd like to take it back to, there's a lot of talk right now about the Internet of Things. So if you're on the P&C side, a lot of people every day, they bring up examples to me of like, well, I went to my car insurer and I got this device in my car that's going to tell me how fast I'm driving. And I think that's been more somewhat acceptable than trying to figure out how do we actually make use of new data points as we simplify the customer journey and the customer experience from an underwriting perspective. We know that technology's evolved, allowing us to have new data points. But I think it's a new era. We're living, and there's studies out there. A study just came out last week. 53% of Canadians, I don't recall the age, but I think it was kind of a wide spectrum, would be willing to give up a certain amount of data for a discount in price or perceived value, for being able to do that. And I think we live in this sort of give something, get something economy. And I think we need to make sense of all of that. There are also regulatory and compliance considerations that as insurers we need to look at. So I think from a life perspective, it's harder than it is on the P&C side, where you're sticking something in someone's car, and we're trying to figure out how do we manage privacy and how do we balance that with, again, there's a new generation, and the numbers are there that we've certainly been looking at that show that people are willing to give up more information. And the question is, we've been asking intrusive questions for years. They've just been in 100-page, long paper life insurance forms. And so if we can be smarter in how we ask those questions, if we can streamline the approach, if we can simplify things for the customer, I think that's what this is all about. Inherently, yes, there's a scale of complexity in what we do and what we offer in products. I think there's always going to be a layer of complexity requiring a great amount of advice, expertise, professionalism, for the complicated world. But I think, again, as Jonathan rightly put, there's some transactional things that we could be doing probably a whole lot better through innovation. And I think that's where we need to focus. How can we improve the customer service and experience level, within that area?
Thank you for that. I've got my eye on the clock. We've got only a few minutes left, so I'm going to do something totally unfair and go through a speed round of questions with anybody who cares to answer it in 30 to 40 seconds. And that question is, should insurance carriers develop solutions internally or look for the right partners to build them with, for example, startups? Catherine, you first.
Both. That was a quick answer. Both.
That's
I don't
good.
think it's not a one or the other. I think it's both, and it depends on your core capabilities as an organization. Do what you're good at, and find a partner who's good at something you're not as good at.
Thank you. Scott.
I would agree both. I think where we need to internally build up capabilities is how to actually work with these insurtechs and the partners that are out there, because I think we've got on the one side big insurance companies, startup guys, and I think there's challenges on bringing those two worlds together. So I believe very much in external scaling of opportunities, getting to things quicker. But these insurtechs are going to starve if we don't get on the bus soon.
Thank you. David, I suspect we all know your response, but what is it?
Yeah, I'll go with a yes on that. Yeah, I think it's important, and I think what we're seeing in insurtechs really is that a lot of them are pivoting and focusing on a very specific piece of the value chain, and I think they're able to bring some deep capabilities in a very specific part of this overall solution. And so I think it's really important that we look for opportunities to kind of leverage that as part of our overall product or experience.
Thank you. And Jonathan.
I'd agree. It's certainly both, and there's a time frame dimension to it as well, and a willingness to commit. So if it's something that you want to experiment with, there's certainly a faster time to market by partnering with an external provider. There's opportunity for synergy there to gain carrier expertise and deep knowledge and data, together with innovative capability from an insurtech. I would agree with the other comments that if it's not core to your business, why do you think you can do it better than someone who has made it their business? So yeah, it's definitely both, but there is an opportunity to move quickly, experiment, fail fast in partnering.
Thank you, Jonathan. And I'll just add, if I may, that it's my belief that partnerships are absolutely critical to the successful future of any insurance company, including integrations. With that, I need to thank our presenters today. Thank you so much. Look forward to hearing from you at our conferences. Thank you to the audience for being attentive and for asking lots of good questions. And we hope to see everybody in Toronto on September 10th and 11th at Connected Insurance Canada. Thank you all. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk again soon.